Christmas tree decoration.
Why is it on your ear?
Well, it's not Christmas, is it?
What, so it doesn't just go into a box, it goes on your ear?
Yeah, I must admit, I got a bit attached to it. It was, it's like a handmade one. Can you see it?
Wait, move it up. My face is in the way of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 12 quid. So I've got to get I can't just use it in December,
Yeah.
can I? Get my 12 quid's worth.
What's its day rate?
Pound.
Yeah, decent, mate. Looks worth every penny.
Yeah, I thought I'd let it hang out with us while we record today's pod.
For context, Luke 1 has got a sheep. A
You've
woolen
started
sheep
recording
hanging
already,
off his
haven't
ear. Yep.
Brilliant.
Oh,
Brilliant.
I should have got you to say something cancelable.
No comment.
I'm excited for this episode today, and I feel like a proper podcaster because I've just picked my mic up. Instead of it being on a stand, I'm talking into it like a proper microphone now.
I'm holding mine as well, but I'm thinking I might get one of those robot arms to have it coming down from above.
When
That's
it's upside down, the sound, I don't know what it does, but it makes the sound 10 times as professional, doesn't it?
Yeah. We'll do it one day and we won't tell anyone, and we'll just see all the juicy comments we get back saying how great the audio is finally.
If one day you just notice us get 10 times better, that'll be why. We won't have changed anything different except flip the mics upside down.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of confused now because where's our introduction?
Yeah, it's rewind time.
Welcome
to Let's Talk Procurement, the only show you need.
Master the art of procurement.
Let's go.
I'm the main boy, Luke 10, and I'm here with the secondary staff member, Luke 1. Hi, Luke 1.
Hello, Luke 10. How you doing?
Good. I'm wishing I'd gone for a wee before we started recording.
Bit too much information, isn't it? But my mother has started listening to the podcast, and she was a bit jealous of, well, one, my dad getting recognition in a previous episode, and two, Denise getting shout outs in a couple of episodes as well. So
yeah,
I've got a very jealous mum actually at the moment, and she actually thought that my name was for the pod purposes of the pod was Luke 1, as in WAN at the end of it. And she was like, why is Luke got a number and you're Luke 1? I was like
Gok 1.
Yeah, literally like Gok 1, yeah. Like the fashionista of procurement, which we all know isn't true.
Oh, you wish that Gok 1 was on your level.
Yeah, absolutely. So do
you
want to
introduce... to be fair.
Have I? Do I?
For anyone who's listening and doesn't know what Luke 1 looks like, imagine Gok 1, but with more hair. How much hair does Gok 1 have? Anyway, so I guess we kind of started our new thing about the bulletin, haven't we?
Well, you're the CEO of segmentation, mate, so you should introduce it first before you just throw the word.
We've rambled on for 4 minutes. So basically, we're going to start doing a bulletin for every episode. We thought about going to call it agenda, but I'm sure everyone's heard the word agenda so many times that you probably get sick of it. So we've gone for bulletin, and I guess you've already ticked off one item on your bulletin. I've got also a story about my mum, and it was something I forgot to say whenever one of the last episodes was, when I talked about listening to the podcast with my mum in the car. Actually, this might go before that episode anyway. So I was listening to the podcast. I was driving me and my mum back from somewhere, and it was quite a long journey, and we had the podcast on because got to show my mum what the good episodes are. And she said, oh, it's really relaxing as like a sleep aid, and then she was like, I'm gonna have a nap because it was a long drive. She was like, I'm gonna have a nap, and she purposely put a podcast episode on so she could use it to try and fall asleep.
Wow.
What do we think about that as a concept first of all, and then I'll finish the story.
Okay, so first of all, I'm taking the download because obviously it's great. Counts towards our overall download statistics and makes us look better than we are. But second of all, absolute joke. Like, what do you mean we're napping music? Like, go and listen to some sleep music, some meditation. Then when you wake up, listen to us. Start your day the right way with a bit of LTP.
Yeah. Fair enough. I get that side, but I also get some people talking. For some people, that makes them feel sleepy. So I get that side of the argument as well. But then what actually happened was, instead of going to sleep, what she just did was started to argue with us about the various different points. She was like, "Oh, I'm not sure that's right," or I knew that, or she I think it was one of the ones where we got onto the one with Dr. Wang, the AI episode where he called us snakes, and she said the question was about the animal that she chose for procurement, and she picked snakes as well, just before the doctor said it. So anyway, it really didn't help her go to sleep because she got more angry about it.
Is she,
that was
in the Hall of Fame?
I think she is, isn't she?
Not for much
Should we
longer.
take her out? Yeah.
100%. Let's boot her off. This is an absolute farce. She does not deserve it.
My mum is the first relegation from the Hall of Fame.
She's going on the Hall of Shame. That's what the nicest going on.
And then my second bulletin point, before we go on to the episode, is I want to make a rule that you can only email us if your name starts with a J.
Why?
And if your name doesn't start with a J, then put a J in front of your name and then email us. A J or an L, those are the only two letters we'll accept. So for Ariel, we'll only accept your email if you address it from Jeriel or Lariel.
So are you telling me that Janet wasn't actually Janet, she's actually Annette?
Annette.
She was Annette this whole time and you've just mugged her off and made her put J in front?
Absolutely. That's why she hasn't got back in touch. She butchered her name.
Interesting. Well, I've got one final thing for the bulletin. I was doing some research and I kind of found out. I mean, you might know it. What would you say a horse's favourite wine is?
Oh God, I never normally try and get jokes, but I just want to get it, so you don't get the satisfaction of saying it.
It's not a dutty wine.
Go on.
Chardonnay. Yeah. Nah, come on, that's good. All right.
Well,
if you didn't like that one, why did the horse cover his body?
Something about mask.
He was naked.
What? I thought you were going to say something about mascarpone, which is a horse's favourite cheese.
Mascarpone is not cheese, mate. It's pasta, isn't it?
You stupid.
No, that's macaroni.
Oh,
Mascarpone's fairly sure.
I know what
cheese.
I do know what the horse's favourite condiment is. Mayonnaise.
So, thanks for the smooth link onto the episode. What the episode's actually about. You probably will have seen from the title and description that it's about something to do with, well, you go mental on the horse. Sorry, not on the horse. You go mental on the naming episodes front, don't you? So it might just be something completely random. But anyway, it's about horse meat in frozen food meals, in the processed meat. But basically, it's a mad story. And I really hope that I do it justice, because there's just so much random stuff going on, and so many connections. So if I haven't done it justice, feel free to research properly into it. It's just like every single thing goes down a massive rabbit hole. And basically, if I ever get killed, then it's probably one of the criminals from this story that has come back and hated me for promoting their criminal activity, even though it's all over the internet. So so there were some horses that were staying in a stable, and one of them starts to boast to the other about his track record. He goes, in the last 17 races, I've won 9 of them. Raises his eyebrows and smirking. Another goes, well, in the last 30 races, I've won 21, mate. So have that. And then another one goes, well, in the last 30 races, I've won 27. And then they spot a greyhound who's sat over in the corner, listening to them. And the greyhound goes, I don't mean to boast, but in my last 100 races, I've won 98 of them. So how's that? And there's a bit of silence that falls over the horses. They're clearly in shock. And after a bit of silence, one of them goes, wow, a talking dog.
All of that for a talking dog. Oh, God. Okay.
So that's probably the worst joke. We've got it out the way early. It only gets
Wait, that
better
was
from here.
absolute pony. Right, can we get into it now?
Yeah. So as I was saying, it's about frozen food and frozen meat. So I shot my first turkey today. Scared the shit out of everyone in the frozen food section.
Sorry, it's not a duck up episode, it's a stand up episode. Is that what we're doing
Okay,
today?
no, okay, right. We'll go on to it properly now. So back in 2013, in February, so there's so many companies involved in this. So ask me for clarifications if it gets complicated because I can barely understand it myself. There's a company called Findus who were notified by Comigel that the beef lasagna may contain horse meat. And Findus supplied a lot of different companies, a couple of them being Tesco, Aldi, and a few other places like that. So they were like the sort of ready frozen meals that you can get. So Saturday 2nd of February, Comigel, which way is it? Downstream, the one who supplies to Findus. I don't know if that's downstream or upstream, but anyway, Comigel supplies Findus. Findus supplies Tesco and Aldi. So on Saturday the 2nd of February, they were notified that it contained horse meat, and then Findus on the 6th of Feb 2013 told Tesco and Aldi, and they removed the meals made by Comigel. But the public wasn't informed until Thursday the 7th of February, when the Food Standards Agency revealed that some meals contained 60 to 100% horse meat, which is quite mad.
So, I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. What's the problem with that?
Let me come on to that in a second. So, the impact of that above stuff was that 26 countries in Europe were involved, so products were taken off the shelves, and even as far away as places like Caribbean, Hong Kong, Singapore, and the food suppliers were given a week to check processed beef for horse meat, or traces of pork, but they didn't have to check anything else or check for traces of any other meats that could be in there. So basically, it's mis-selling, isn't it? It's basically fraud, because if you're labelling something as beef and what's actually in there is horse meat, fraud, potentially falsifying documents and stuff. Did you hear, by the way, about that man who was hospitalised with 7 plastic horses inside him? Doctors describing his condition as stable.
You can't keep getting away with it!
This is bad.
Banging.
When you said you were preparing for this episode earlier in the week, I thought, right, he's actually all over this. And that's what we get, guys. I'm sorry, listeners. Sorry.
It is quite joke heavy at the start, I'll be honest. Oh, by the way, I should have done a disclaimer, by the way. If you're eating, probably not the best one to listen to. Go and listen to, I don't know, Barbershop or Triple Bottom Line or something, or KFC. It does get a little bit gory towards the middle, Anyway, carry on. So it started back before the financial crisis in Ireland. Ireland was in an economic boom, and as a status symbol, a lot of people bought into horses. And I went out over there to do some kind of in-person investigation. I put a bet on one of the horses, and it came in at 10-1. Unfortunately, all the other horses came in at 12.45.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer.
He loves that one.
I like that one. All right.
Yeah. Also, while I was out there, a bloke told me about one of the horses that was running in the races. It was called Landfill. I said, mate, that's a rubbish tip. All right. There's no jokes for a while after that. Okay, here we go. So when the financial crisis happened, one of the easiest and first things that people gave up to kind of save money was the investment in horses. So many horses were either put down or sold or just basically abandoned in fields, which is just quite scary, and just basically spare animals with no one looking after them. And then it popped up that there were specific people who were very keen to buy these horses that were pretty much going spare. They were just buying them up in huge numbers. And obviously that didn't really make commercial sense on the face of it. Like, why would you just buy horses that people can't get rid of, pretty much? And what was actually happening was kind of criminal organisation, and they were substituting cheaper horse meat for beef, and forcing it onto the customers unknowingly. So that happened obviously in Ireland. So in terms of getting that to England and Great Britain, so when a horse is transported to the UK, it can be done without any kind of need for inspection. They just have passports, but when it's exploited for slaughter, it needs signatures and loads of other documentation to say that it hasn't been drugged, or there's not stuff in the horse that is suitable for consumption, basically. And just that's so that dangerous drugs and diseases are kept out of the human food system. But once you bring a horse load of lorries over, we can probably sell it for about 4 times the price. You think this is a joke? It's not actually a joke. That's genuine.
You just said a horse load of lorries.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
A horse load. That's the episode title, Horse Load of Lorries. A lorry load of horses, sorry. Yeah. And once the horses get to England, they go into a bar, and the barman says, "Why the long face?"
No, God!
So they were first investigated in Ireland by Animal Protection Team. I know I've rambled on for a while, but this is going to be a long episode. Animal Protection Team noticed that horses were going missing on a huge scale, basically. So they secretly videoed these farms and found that people were taking all these horses into the trucks, shipping them off to, right in the middle of the night as well, by the way. So it wasn't during the day. It was, basically complete darkness. Very sus. Just picking up so many horses, and they followed one of these trucks to a stables, and they found that loads of trucks would just turn up in the middle of the night and drop off so many horses. So after everyone had gone, still during the night, they went in and they looked, and they just found loads of horses crammed into this one stables. And then they went back the next day, and this is the grim part, by the way. All that was left when they came back was the hooves, the head, the guts.
Jesus.
And that's how they realised what was going on. It was all for the horse meat, basically.
Christ, that's horrific, isn't it?
Yeah. But do you know above that, what's a horse's biggest fear? Getting hay fever.
I don't feel so good.
What? More than becoming horse meat, yeah?
Yeah. So, in terms of more impact, no one's really accepting the blame, as you'd probably imagine. So supermarkets aren't, the frozen food producers obviously aren't either, and their suppliers. But the meat obviously passed through every company. So how are they getting away with it? The companies are sort of just saying, "I didn't know," which I thought it's a
up
good
the supply chain.
it's a good strategy for when I was going to say if, but when we get cancelled, we can just say, "I didn't know."
No, it's expensive. Yeah, no.
So yeah. So I don't think there's ever been any criminal proceedings. And the Food Standards Agency hasn't found any dangerous drugs in the meat that it tested, but still doesn't mean that the customers haven't been frauded. We could say this was a good, efficient podcast if someone listens to it expecting efficiency and lots of knowledge.
Do you say lots of knowledge or loss of knowledge? Because I think
said
lots of knowledge might be.
Lots of knowledge is better.
I think would you say that the farmers were kind of aware at all? Because obviously someone's got to be putting animals into slaughterhouse, turn them into, put them on a processing machine, turn them into a bit of food, put them in a ready-made packet for lunch. Somebody must know that it's not just their cows that are going in or their whatever.
For sure, yeah. I think because there's so many steps, and that's something we'll talk about later. There's so many steps to the supply chain. It's a bit complicated. So more background. So ABP, company called ABP, which stands for Anglo-Irish Beef Processors. Somehow that's a mouthful of to pronounce. So ABP supplied Tesco, Aldi, Co-op, and Burger King, and those burgers from ABP were tested and confirmed to have horse DNA in them. So the owner of ABP had already been involved in a fraud trial, but the trial found that he had no idea of illegal activity in his company. There was basically no evidence that he knew what was going on, but the ABP had already been involved in a fraud trial. So I read this really good Guardian article where they just did kind of like a deep dive on it. Would definitely recommend it to anyone who wants to know more. I did have to read it about 10 times, to get it into my brain though. So ABP bought meat from a Dutch tradesman called Willie Selton.
Why is that funny when half your jokes? Willie Selton and horses.
So Selton was told to recall 50,000 tons of meat. So that's enough for 100 million packs of burgers sold over the previous 2 years, because he was unable to prove where the meat came from. And then in May, Selton was arrested by Dutch police on suspicion of fraud and false accounting. So Selton told The Guardian that horse meat had been mixed with beef to order for only 10 months, and claimed that where old meat was being cleaned up and mixed with horse meat, he intended it to be for pet food. But workers in Poland, interviewed by The Guardian again, claimed that they were cutting up and mixing horse meat delivered from slaughterers in the UK and Germany. And another grim part coming up. The defrosted beef was several years old, and so old sometimes that it was green, and they had to tie towels around their face to stop them being sick. And it was just all sort of dodgy dealing in terms of they worked out of hours shifts, they were paid in cash, and they said that the mixing and relabeling of the horse meat went on for 5 years.
So the chances are we probably all had a nibble.
Probably, yeah. If you've had meat at some point from Selton, it probably has been. So ABP, going back to ABP, they blamed the addition of horse meat on rogue managers again at one of their sites, who, without the knowledge of the head office company, were buying from suppliers. Weren't buying from the approved list of suppliers. ABP later admitted a breach of contract and straying out of food specifications, but stated that no one knowingly processed horse meat.
That's really interesting. That's I don't know if our definitions one's gone live yet, but rogue rogue buyers is definitely one of them, isn't it? And it's interesting that they point at that as an explanation. I'm not sure that's sufficient enough to say that they weren't aware of particular individuals, because the size and scale of this shenanigans, it feels like you couldn't just have one rogue agent like making it happen. Do you know what I mean? But they would have had to notice, but all this cash has gone missing, or all this cash is going out, blah blah blah. I think before we crack on, I think it's probably worth saying that we're both in the UK, right? And this affected UK and Ireland, and I think elsewhere, like you said, in Europe. But horse meat is actually seen as a viable meat product in a lot of countries. So China's one of the big ones, obviously. And then we've got like Italy, France, Belgium, Japan, Kazakhstan. All of those countries frequently have horse.
Whether we don't.
So in the UK, it's a horse is basically a pet or a hobby or a racer. And not seen as food. So you can go over to Italy, and again that's like a 2-hour flight, and you could be having horse ragu, because it's commonly known that horse and beef taste extremely similar. So you can understand that it would be viewed as a substitute product, but what you can't accept or tolerate is the fact that it was missold to customers, and obviously the labels would still demonstrate that it's beef and not horse, and a lot of people were probably outraged by the fact that they've eaten a perceived sort of pet animal, if you like. It's the same with dogs. So nobody in the UK would eat dog meat, but other countries might. And I think a lot of people would be very disappointed in themselves if they did eat dog, because obviously we do love our pet dogs.
That was actually really good context. We should crop that into the start. So it does get weirder. And by the way, as well, something else that makes it bad is the treatment of the horses. So there was various times where people planted hidden cameras and different things like that, and they just saw that like horses still alive were hung upside down, and horses were grouped together in like a tiny little pen, say like 3 of them, and all shot one at a time, obviously causing more distress to the other horses seeing the other ones get shot. So Selton, again, our mate Willie Selton, who was sourcing the meat for ABP, so sometimes it was meat from him, but sometimes he also used a company called Norwest Foods. This company was ran by the son of a former agriculture minister of Ireland. So if anyone's on the bingo, there's potential government corruption that people don't know about, or potentially is going on. We don't know. Norwest Food had a slaughterhouse in Spain and, wait for it, an office in Poland.
Convenient.
So in September 2013, both companies announced a confidential financial settlement where Norwest apologised for selling horse meat to ABP Silvercrest site, where the rogue buying went on unwittingly. So reputational impact again there. Moving on again. So there's evidence to suggest that organised crime was involved. So there's this one Northern Irish guy who he brought some horses over to the UK. On the way back, he apparently smuggled 500k worth of cannabis on a return journey in an empty horse box, which
wow.
If that doesn't show you the type of random weird stuff that's going on in this story, I don't know what will.
This is going to be a TV series in a few years.
Oh yeah, for sure. Don't know if you ever listened to the Dollop podcast, but this definitely sounds like an episode of the Dollop podcast. So then, another separate company, their products were found to contain bute, which is a horse drug banned from the food chain. They tested it. They found there was horse meat in there, but because the test took 3 weeks, all of the meat had moved further downstream by that point. And one of the last kind of points on this as well, before we talk about some other things, is pretty much every company, as we've said before, claimed to be a victim of the fraud to shift the blame. So Tesco, Burger King, Aldi Co-op obviously said that they were victims. Even ABP said that, this is their quote, "If equine was deliberately introduced into the food chain, then we are among those who have suffered as a result of such activity."
Oh, okay.
So I looked at a couple of comments on this video I watched, which is also quite good. Actually, let me recommend that other video because that was also really good. They properly go into it in terms
We'll
of.
put them in the episode description. So
yeah,
our listeners
yeah.
can follow up
But
if want to.
they went into it and they kind of showed all the footage as well, which was quite interesting, but obviously a bit hard to watch at points. So a couple of comments from people were, horse is more expensive than beef, so if you want to give me horse instead of beef, bring it on. And then another shocked customer had quite a serious reaction to the news that IKEA meatballs also had horse in there.
No.
They said, IKEA sells food? That's messed up. So anyway, finally moving on to why did it happen? And for everything that I've said, potentially quite a simple reason. People think it happened because the retail supply chain is just crazily complex. So people are buying from people. And for example, the factory that supplied Tesco with its 29% horse beef burgers was using multiple ingredients. This is another quote: multiple ingredients from 40 suppliers in production batches, and the mixture could vary every half an hour. That was according to the Irish Department of Agriculture.
Just an absolute mess of a supply chain because
Yeah.
they're trying to keep the cost as low as possible.
And so you might be seeing nowadays that more people are, more companies at supermarkets are buying local. So say British beef or, British chicken, something like that. And I think that's as a result of consumer outrage, basically. Like, it wasn't enough for the supermarkets to just say, "Oh, we didn't know either." People wanted something else to be done.
Nothing better than a good old British chicken, with its Union Jack tattoo and its bulldog pet. Classic.
It's absolutely wasted when it goes to Ibiza as well.
Yeah, free range geezer. Voted Brexit. Happy days. Sorry, I don't know why I went off on that little track. I also, in the background, was looking at bute. Bute was actually used in the 1950s as medicine for humans, to help with some sort of issue with blood cells and blood disorders. However, they then realised that actually extremely high doses of it can cause a lot of problems, including blood disorders.
And it's banned from the food chain now.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. It was used initially to treat arthritis, but could develop massive blood disorders. So, small price to pay.
So that's basically all I had on the story side of it. And that's taken 15 minutes just to explain the story. So actually not that long, 10 minutes, but yeah, go on. What do you think about the kind of the background and what are your thoughts?
I think soaking it in, because like you say, it's quite a big one to untangle. What's happened in the procurement world since then as well? The GDPR legislation. It's not useful in the horse context, but it's what it's done is it means if there's a data breach in your supply chain, you are just as responsible for that breach. Well, I say just as, you are still responsible for that breach. Whereas previously it would have just been the party that effectively incurred the breach, right? So that's making sure companies are more aware and top of, considerate of data protection considerations in the supply chain. And it's almost like you want the same sort of thing for the food agents, as in nobody in that supply chain is free from blame, because actually as soon as it lands on your desk, you should be responsible for checking what's been delivered, signing it off and confirming, I'm happy that is beef or that is horse or whatever. the GDPR side kind of forces accountability on all companies involved, whereas there seems to be a lack of that in this situation. I don't know if you agree with that, but
I do, and ultimately, if you want to continue to be getting business as a company, you can't just use the excuse of, oh, sorry, we didn't know what was in the products or we're selling. People will just stop buying the products or they go somewhere else. So it benefits the companies as well to know what's in the supply chain.
what I would say is it is quite a murky industry. I don't know if you remember, Primark were accused of kind of child labour and sweatshops, which is probably another duck up we can do at some point. And they were accused of effectively using underhand employment tactics to make sure they can keep their prices low. And as a result of that, they suffered huge reputational damage, had to kind of rebrand, and have kind of course, their prices have gone up since, but they've kind of reapproached their way to the clothing market. With the food stuff, we don't actually know anyone in our supply chain who's actually providing the food other than maybe the supermarket and potentially the brand. So you might know, Bernard Matthews or whatever being sold in Tesco's. Like, that's as far as it gets.
So while we think about SIP stuff, might be helpful to go through the supply chain, because it's quite a murky one. So Tesco, Aldi, Co-op, Burger King, so many other companies are potentially involved in it as well, like IKEA maybe. But in the case of Tesco and Burger King, they bought meat from ABP. ABP bought meat from your mate Willie Selton. Willie Selton potentially, we don't know, was supplying horse meat for up to 5 years and meat that had gone green. But when it wasn't the meat from him that had come from UK and Germany, it was meat from Norwest Foods.
Yeah.
And Norwest Foods and ABP reached a settlement. So the reason the meat got to Tesco and the other places was ABP sold it onto Comigel. Comigel sold it onto Findus. Findus sold it onto the big supermarkets.
Yeah, and that's
so you can see how many layers there are.
Yeah, and I think even when you go back to the kind of first supplier in that chain, if you really got if you went up to their head office and you looked into their operations, it's not going to be them with loads of farms. It's probably going to break down to a bunch of farmers scattered all across Europe.
Yeah.
All with different opinions. Like if you go over to an Italian farmer and say, I want to buy 50,000 horses, he's going to say, yeah, of course, nothing wrong with that. That's what he does for his day-to-day business anyway, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you ask a UK farmer, I want to buy some horses for my food pit, they'll be like, oh, no, that's a bit sketch, mate. We don't sell your horses. So you can see how it all kind of filters into one, I guess, headline company name and then gets passed through. But that doesn't justify it at all, in any way.
And I remember when we did the KFC one, you talked about who's had the biggest reputational damage. So maybe because I wasn't too involved in this at the time, because it was in 2013, I only knew this as the Tesco horse meat thing. I didn't even know that Lidl, Co-op, Burger King, IKEA were even involved in it.
I think when it hit the news and the media, it was first discovered as a Tesco thing, which is why it became the Tesco horse meat scandal. And that did wonders for the other brands because they actually got out of the limelight for a while. And even now to this day, I think a lot of people just associate it with Tesco's. And I think even the misconception was it's the Tesco's own brand stuff. So everyone was like, oh, it must be the Tesco own brand stuff, so I'm never buying that again. And so they took a hit on their own, I think it's the everyday value range, which I think they've since rebranded as well. They changed the packaging and stuff to make it look more, just like a different brand. The reputational damage is definitely done at the front end, the customer facing side. I'm sure the other companies mentioned are probably still operating as normal and just making sure they don't put the horse in the blender. Or the same blender as the beef, I should say.
So SIPs stuff, where does this apply to SIPs and how could you put it in an exam answer?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it could come up in a sort of multitude of things, but I think where SIPs aim at, supply chain management, the importance of understanding your supply chain, effectively supply chain management from end-to-end process. So not just your tier 1 suppliers, but your tier 2s, tier 3s, is probably an area where you would look to explain this as an example of why you need to be on top of your supply chain, at least to a certain degree. And the other thing is probably around sort of contracts. You've got to make sure that your contractual construct is set up in a way that if your supplier can use subcontractors, they have to flow down certain terms and conditions and standards and levels to make sure that everyone in your supply chain is effectively adhering to the same standards. Otherwise, you could see why it would slip further down.
For sure, yeah, and you can see, for example, if you were Findus, the company that were directly supplying Tesco, if Tesco's trying to get the losses out of you, if you're the only company, if say it's not your fault, but you didn't put something in the contract to be able to recover the money from your subcontractor, that could potentially cause a company to go bust, couldn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So it's just being mindful of that, and I think a lot of the time it's easy to say, we've got to flow down these obligations, but sometimes the companies you're flowing them down to might not actually understand the whole principle or purpose of flow downs and forget to do it on their side, which is obviously to some extent their problem, but again, that's all about just educating your supply chain and being a bit more cooperative as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of 2 use cases really from a SIPS perspective. But as always with the duck ups, I like to think if you've got them in mind, sort of in the back of your mind, and you can take away a few of the key points, you never know when you just need to put it out of the bag, and that's your example, right? You might be writing an answer and you think, oh, that'd be a nice little supplement to the kind of actual theory behind the answer I'm giving, which is really important in SIPs. You do have to give your own spin on it and your own context to the theory.
And for the non-SIPs people, real life applicable, well, contracting talked about, eating meat from places, I've realized now that 2 of our episodes have been about meat. I'm probably one of the least likely people to go vegetarian, but if I'm somehow convincing you to go vegetarian, then I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing is around supply chain collaboration and cultural differences / cultural understanding as well. You need to have that collaborative relationship with your supply chain, so you get to a stage where your discussions are open and honest, and you're both on an understanding of what you want and what your customers want. But then also you have to be mindful of your cultural differences. So if I'm looking to get my source meat from abroad, I've just got to be conscious. Let's say I'm dealing with China. I've just got to be conscious that what China defines as, a chicken could be completely different to what we see as a chicken, right?
Yeah. Say for example, if they, if it's like chicken meat, would we expect it to be 100% chicken meat? But they would say, oh, it's over 50%, or maybe China's a bad example, but I see what you mean. Yeah,
and it's stuff that could be lost in translation, or it could be just cultural differences. Like, beef in China could genuinely be 80% beef and 20% horse. And then if that's the case, it's completely understandable that they would then ship over beef with horse meat in it. Obviously, that wasn't the case in this example, but it's just about understanding or being mindful of the different potential cultures that are out there, and that's something we will discuss in a different episode, because cultural differences is something that we have to be mindful of in supply chain, especially with a more global market.
Yeah, the people are on the email, by the way, requesting you to do accent challenge for cultural differences app. Yeah.
Did their name begin with J? Because if they didn't, then I can't do it.
It's Jimmy.
Jimmy, okay. We'll see about that.
Jandrew messaged in, and so did
Jandrew.
Did
we'll
Lark.
See. we'll see. I can't promise to that because it's not my forte.
So any takeaways from this episode? There's a pun there. My takeaway is that I went and bought a horse. I rescued one from the side of the road, but he doesn't go out much because he's a Shire horse.
Cricket sounds.
Slow burner that one.
You've really put us through it this episode, to be honest. I'm kind of conscious that your whole planning is actually more around the jokes and the puns than it is the.
Do you know? Normally yes, but this one I actually did quite a lot of non-joke research. And JR, you don't seem rejuvenated by my jokes.
Yeah, no, look, I'm in two minds. I want to know more about what the listeners think of your jokes. To be fair, because I think some of them are absolutely shocking. Some of them are half decent, but maybe we just put a poll out on whether we get you to increase the amount of jokes or stop the amount of jokes, just stop completely or reduce it. Because
I'm gonna say. I'm gonna come up with a random combination of 3 letters, 4 numbers, and then another 3 letters. If someone emails in with that exact combination of the 10 digits, then I will stop the jokes. But if not, every other email we get, I'll take it as if they want me to carry on and actually increase the number. Sound like a plan?
Yeah, okay, that's a plan. I don't know if anyone will get that, but that's a plan. But my neighbour's pony has just come down with a bit of a, I don't know, it's been affected by some ghosts. It's been haunted. So we've just called in an exorcist to fix it up.
Come on, that was worse than my one.
Nah, that was good. That was going to be the opener as well. But the same horse, he just refuses to use Android phones. Apparently he only likes Apples. Oh yeah, he's gone on mute because he's just crying.
No,
so,
I don't like that one.
On that absolutely hilarious note, we'll see you in the next one.
Send this to someone if you want to make them sick. Send this to someone who's eating if you want to make them sick. Or send this to someone if you've ever seen a joke.
See you later.
See you later.